Welcome everyone to what is the fourth of a series of guest speaker panels put on in collaboration with the College of Natural Sciences and Mathematics, the Career Center, and Degrees Project, which means dedicated to educating, graduating, and retaining equity students. This has been a really fun collaboration for all of us, and I can't even tell you how excited I am about the panel that we have with us today. What an amazing group of individuals. And as I think about it, I think of the students, you students and alumni that are on the call. I hope you really take advantage of this time because although you're going to be hearing a lot about their stories, this is also a dialogue. So this is your opportunity to engage, to ask questions. So from a housekeeping standpoint, so that the Zoom session goes smoothly, we will ask that all the guests, students and alumni on the call keep your video off and your mute on, but your mics, but that doesn't mean we don't want to hear from you. So please do jump into that chat and post any questions as they come up along the way. We have an amazing group of four panelists with us and possibly five. I'm kind of watching our connectivity here. And before I introduce them all to you, I just want to say thank you to our team that put this together and thank you to our really esteemed and amazing panelists who are going to share their information with you today. My name is Mary Coburn. I work in the Career Center, and also on the call today is Kate Lockwood, who works also in the Career Center. We're part of the employer relations team, and Kate will be behind the scenes managing the chat, and I'll be moderating these questions as they come up. There's Kate. Hi, Kate. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panelists to you. We have with us today Scott Furness. You can maybe give a wave there, Scott. Yeah. Scott is president of California Laboratory Services. When I looked, Scott, it looked like you've been there for a while, 24 years, is that correct? Yes, amazing. And I'm really looking forward to hearing your story of your career trajectory during your time with this organization. We also have with us Kate Dyer. Kate is CEO and founder of StemExpress, and I was really taken by the first sentence when I read about StemExpress. In 2010, armed with $9,000 and a vision, Ms. Dyer founded StemExpress to shorten the time it takes for new treatment technologies to reach patients. StemExpress procures samples at researcher request and isolates cells using specialized protocols and cutting-edge lab technology. And there's a lot more to that story, so I'm looking forward to hearing that. We also have Richard Spaz on the call. Richard is a senior regulatory scientist supervisor with the California Department of Pesticide Regulation. He also has an interesting background, which I'm going to save for him to share with you. But he's been in the field of environmental chemistry for a while. Would that be accurate, Richard? Yes. Okay. And we also have with us Poonam Chandra, and thank you so much. Poonam was actually originally scheduled to be with us in one of the earlier sessions, and she was pulled away to take care of grapes affected by the recent fires. So that's an interesting hint into some of the work that she does. Poonam is Senior Environmental Scientist Supervisor with the California Department of Food and Agriculture. We have quite a few alumni on this panel as well. So for those of you, once we get started, we appreciate sharing your, go Hornets, your background there. And let's get started. So I'm just curious to hear more about each of you. So for starters, I'd love to just hear a little bit about what you're actually doing now for your work, and a little bit about what the organization or companies you work for, because I think one of the things that many of us don't know is what actually goes on in these organizations. So I'm going to start with you, Richard. If you could share a little bit about what you're doing right now and what it's like to work at the Department of Pesticide Regulation.
Yeah, my name is Richard Spotts. Actually, I'm a senior environmental scientist supervisor at the Department of Pesticide Regulations in the registration branch. I've been there for 17 years. I started in as a regulatory scientist, worked my way up to, I was the ombudsman for the department for a while, quite some time, and then finally moved up to being a supervisor.
And tell me a little bit about what happens at this organization. What do you all do during the day?
All right, so the Department of Pesticide Regulations is, first of all, it's a lot of people have that misnomer about, oh, it's pesticides, we're trying to kill stuff. No, actually, our mission statement is to protect human health and the environment through the regulation of pesticides. So we're actually trying to limit what is out there and what can and cannot be used at safe levels as per labeled instructions. So we take actually an individual look at all the data that comes in for each individual product that you're using. Now, one thing that a lot of people don't think about is, they think pesticides are thinking, no, you're killing rats or you're killing, weeds or something out in agricultural. But what people don't realize is we're in your house also. We're looking at all the antimicrobial stuff. Maybe you're cleaning your bathrooms, your kitchens. For that matter, we have a lot of COVID-19 products that we're registering right now to making sure that it's efficacious and safe to use for the user.
Very interesting. Thank you, Richard. Scott, tell us a little bit about what you do and what it's like to work there.
Yeah, you bet. So my name is Scott Furness. I always joke that I'm a professional juggler. I'm a small business. I've got 38 employees and all of us wear multiple hats to get the job done. So we do environmental chemistry here at California Laboratory Services, and we do it in a production mode, meaning we get paid by getting it in and out as fast as possible, meeting all the regulatory requirements of the methods that we're following. And that can be either an EPA method or a standard method or an ASTM method, depending on the scope of work. So we deal primarily in water, and water is a broad definition. It could be rainwater, it could be surface water, it could be groundwater, it could be a hazardous waste substance. Name a liquid solution, we've got our hands in it. And then we also deal in solids. So that's primarily soil for us, although we do some work in support of Prop 65 for the phthalates and whatnot. But primarily it's solids, soil. And then we work on our client requirements. So a lot of our clients are industrial users, so they have a wastewater discharge permit that they must follow. Therefore, there's testing involved to make sure that they're not exceeding their maximum daily loads or whatever the case may be under their permit. New home transactions, lots of new construction going on in Folsom, for example. So anytime a new school is being built, the Department of Toxic Substance Control asks that we look for pesticides, chlorinated pesticides, which are more legacy-based pesticides, and then arsenic and lead. So it's really client-driven what we're asked to analyze for, but we do consider ourselves a full-service laboratory because we have a microbiology department, we have an inorganic department, metals, a wet chemistry, organic semi-volatile, organic volatile. There's lots of moving parts here in the laboratory. So, and we work under a 5 business day turnaround time. So we're all moving at a pretty quick clip, and it's a very good oiled machine. And we are 26 years in business this year, so we've been doing it for a long time.
Amazing, man. You two have something in common there.
We do, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, interesting. And Kate, would you mind sharing with us a little bit about what you do and your company?
Yeah, thank you so much, Mary, and thanks everyone for having me, and welcome to the folks participating with us today. So, StemExpress, I started StemExpress in 2010, and as Mary stated, started the company with really $9,000, and it's not a misprint, and really an attempt to try to accelerate the speed in which drug discoveries, cures, new devices and technologies could enter the market to support patient care with some of life's most debilitating diseases. And so the company has just drastically grown since I first started it. And, I used to really feel like I knew what rapid growth looked like. But in this last year, we've experienced tremendous growth since sort of COVID hit. One of the things in kind of our core business, we isolate predominantly stem cells for medical research, clinical trials, and commercial use. We have 7 locations around the United States and have, like I said, been doing this for 10 years. But when COVID hit, one of the things we did was offer up those 7 locations and the laboratories associated with them to do COVID testing. And so the amount of growth, we've hired an additional 80 people in the last 5 months. And we're now over about 175 people we've just seen tremendous amount of growth with what we're doing with this. We landed a federal contract with the CDC, doing antibody-based screening of patients that come through our own facilities, but we also we're doing all of the testing for Sac County. We man 10 different booths for Sacramento County, 32 different hospitals in Northern California, as well as a number of Indian tribes, nursing homes, and just private businesses. So it's been an incredibly busy few months for us. And as we were chatting before a little bit on this call, I think we're all hoping and wishing that, things evolve here with COVID and how it's messing with so many of our lives. And, as much as we're knee deep in the middle of this, I would say we wish for those same things as well, to sort of get back to the new normal. But most of the testing relationships we're working on now, some big agreements with San Francisco and Health and Human Services, they're looking out, 24 months. In most of the conversations that we're in nowadays, it's really what does the next 24 months look like. So lots of planning, lots of meetings, and of course, a lot of focus on the election tomorrow. So there's my get out and vote pitch. But yeah, that's what we do, Mary, in a nutshell.
Yeah, thank you, Kate, and I appreciate you taking time with us today, because you have a lot going on there. And for students and alumni on the call, this is a little hint at the fact that COVID makes a lot of changes, but there's some upsides to what's going on here in terms of opportunities. So thank you for sharing that, Kate. More to come. Poonam, if you wouldn't mind, tell us a little bit about what you do. I was intrigued by your running out to save the grapes before, so I'd love to hear a little bit more.
Thank you, Mary. Today, I have to tell you that I'm very excited to be part of this event. I am a senior environmental scientist supervisor for the Food Safety Laboratory at CDFA's Division of Inspection Services at the Center for Analytical Chemistry. Let me tell you that CDFA has reached a milestone last year. It was the 100th year for the legislature's decision to create an agency that would help protect and promote agriculture. And through great leadership and years of innovations, we have helped serve that mission to protect consumers and promote California agriculture. At the Food Safety Laboratory, we provide analytical services for testing of pesticides and other environmental contaminants in different types of matrices: food, water, soil, feed samples, vegetation, air. And now we are kind of entering a little bit of cannabis space and GMO testing. So lots of different types of testing for different active ingredients. And our clients are different state agencies. Richard Sparse DPR is one of our clients, and USDA and the County Agricultural Commissioners. So the results, the analytical services that we provide, we get numbers for all these different, if we find any type of residue. And the results are used for setting up tolerances, for regulations, and for enforcement actions in cases of misuse or drift of pesticides. And I do have a bachelor's degree in chemistry from Sac State, and last year I graduated with an MBA from Sac State. So.
All right, double Sac State, go Hornets. That's awesome. And all righty, this is such an interesting background. So let's get the conversation started. Students and alumni on the call, one thing I'd like to ask you to do while we're forging ahead with our conversation, so that our panelists know who's on the call, if you wouldn't mind, please just put in the chat your first name, your major, and what class level you're at, or if you're an alum. That'll help us know who's on the call as you learn more about them. So we'd love to hear from you. Anybody want to jump in there and go ahead and put your name in the chat and what you're studying. It'll help us see who's on the call now that you know a little bit about our panelists. Who's going to jump in there? There we go. Pre-biological sciences major, first year. Excellent. Love to see first year students joining in on these calls. I was one of those students that waited till later, so that's excellent. All right, student chemistry, master's, excellent. So as students are doing that, I'm going to ask our panelists to now take sort of a dive back in time, if we could. I'd love to hear a little bit about what the origins of your career looked like, and specifically what it was like for you when you started your career journey. It could have been decision making you made while you were in school, the choice of major, and then also what it looked like for you when you graduated, what your sort of first steps were as you exited college. And of course, we want to hear about what you studied. So why don't we start with you, Poonam, because we just heard from you last while we're on a roll.
So I graduated with a bachelor's in chemistry in 2006. And while I was doing that, I was working part-time at Consumers River College and, and a little bit with my advisor at Sac State, with my science advisor doing research in her lab, Dr. Catherine McReynolds. So working here and there, no major. I did not have any major work experience when I graduated. And so it was kind of tough for me to find a job because I didn't have nothing in my, like no tools in my toolbox to just a piece of paper, degree, I had decent grades, so that kind of helped. But I found a notice outside of the chemistry department where it said they were looking for, CDFA was looking for student assistants. And at the time I was like, okay, let me try this. So I applied and I'm grateful I got in. And I worked there for about a year or so and I graduated. And then I started looking for a permanent job. And still it was kind of hard. I couldn't get into a job that would be in the chemistry field and where I would use my chem knowledge and do what I like to do. So I changed gears and went into a different field and actually energy. I worked with the energy department for a while and I realized that's not what I wanted to do. So then I started looking again for chemistry jobs. And then luckily I interviewed a couple of times at CDFA and then I found a job, a permanent full-time job at CDFA. And that was in 2007. So I have stayed here since then. And I worked my way up as a supervisor. And around 2007, 8, 9, I was thinking of going back to school and getting my master's degree in chemistry. And I actually started the process, but then I had my first child. And as a new mom, it was really hard for me to leave my child at night and during the day. So I couldn't do that. I didn't have the heart to do that. So then I dropped and I'm like, okay, just full-time job and I'll take care of my kid. And that's what I did. And then 2018, that's when I decided, okay, I'm not going to do chemistry masters anymore. And I'm going to go into the business field. And that's when I went and again, went back to Sac State and got my MBA and graduated last year. So I did not have a straight journey. It was not, and I had a lot of bumps across the way before I ended up here. But I really enjoy working for CDFA. I realized this is what I truly love. I come from a farming background, so with agriculture and chemistry, it's kind of like a fusion of both of those, and it's fun to work here.
Mary, you're muted.
Thank you. Poonam, quick question for you. I was just going to ask you, how did you know you were interested in chemistry? And you talked about a farming background. Can you just expand on that a little bit?
I grew up in a sugarcane farming. I'm actually originally from Fiji Islands. I grew up, my early childhood days were on the sugarcane plantations, and I was always curious, how the farming, we use a lot of things on the farms and how it wasn't, there's so many rules and regulations and so much resources over here, but back in Fiji, it wasn't, I wasn't aware of the resources that we had, and I was always curious about it. Actually, I wanted to be a pharmacist when I actually came to US and went to college, but I didn't want to go to school for that long. I started and I'm like, I have to graduate, and then I just started my life, so I need to find a job first, settle down, and then if I want to go back, then I'll go back. But then I was, I just fell in love with this job, and I'm very happy here. So I never did. dropped out of, never even applied to pharmacy school. Just stayed with chemistry and agriculture.
It's great to hear your decision-making process, and for students on the call, and this is life, right? We try things, we try other things, and it's wonderful to hear that story and how you landed. Thank you, Poonam, for sharing that. Richard, would you mind telling us a little bit about your early career and your decision-making, how you got started in this field?
Let's see, I got started in this field because I needed a job, period. All right, so initially when I came into Sac State, I was working on a biological sciences pre-med emphasis, the minor in chemistry, was going through that, graduated from Sac State, but I knew when I was going to Sac State that, college isn't cheap, it's not free. So I actually took a job at an analytical chemistry laboratory in El Dorado Hills. And I said, I'll take any possible job you can give me. So literally within a week, I was scrubbing floors, washing dishes, washing glassware. And that's where I got my start. Worked my way through school, finished up. And then with full-blown intention of going back into med school to be a podiatrist, study of the feet from basically. And I said, I'm going to take a year off. I'm, early 20s. I need just a little bit of time to gather. And so then as soon as I graduated, they basically said, hey, the laboratory I was working for, they said, I really love your work ethic. Why don't you work for us in that interim year? Absolutely. Okay, that's great. And then I realized 17 years later that maybe I'm not going back to med school. Really enjoyed it. Actually worked my way up from your glassware washer to fish chopper, fish grinder, because we did a lot of analytical samples. It was a dioxin and polychlorinated biphenyl labs, PAH lab, some of the major carcinogens that's found in nature. So that's where I got my start. Worked my way up from fish chopper and grinder to laboratory extraction chemist, up to hiring. I don't want to say manager, but it was a hiring person, hired supervisor, and then worked my way to doing high resolution mass spectrometry work. And I did that for 17 years. And then like Poonam, that's about the time I got married. And I said, I really want it. As much as I enjoyed doing the work, don't get me wrong, the work was great. I really felt like I was doing something with everything, with my background, my knowledge, everything like that. It was that I need to balance my work and life, because when you were that dedicated to a job, you literally will they say, hey, do you want to work the weekend? I'll jump at the chance. Yeah, I will. I'll work a weekend. What, you want me to work 12, 14-hour days? I'm on it. I'm your guy. Didn't mind, because I was single, didn't really have much, else going on in the afternoons. So that's how I really got started. And then, got married and had a family, and that's when it was time for a change, and I wanted a steady 9-to-5 job. So I looked at the state, and that's where I jumped on over here.
Yes, the benefits of government work, and we'll probably get into that a little later.
Which, by the way, I had zero pesticide knowledge when I came on board to DPR. I had none whatsoever.
So what was it? Why do you think they hired you then? Just in a nutshell.
Well, it's not for my great hairstyle.
In other words, that you brought some skills with you, I take it.
I brought some skills with me. I believe that they really liked a kind of a fresh perspective that I was bringing from a real world experience point of view into government work. Having that switch of gears from going from private to public industry it's a major clutch, jerk. It's like, whoa. It's just completely different.
Yeah. Interesting. Two different worlds. That's great. It gives you great perspective too. Thank you, Richard. Appreciate it. Kate, would you mind hopping in next and sharing with us the origins of what got you all the way to where you are today, how it all started?
Yeah, thank you. And thanks everyone. So like a few people on this call, my sort of family background was in ag. I, come from sort of a ranching family background, so that's always been really close to my heart. And then also very entrepreneurial family members, folks that have started businesses. My dad has started a number of businesses. So I sort of had this definite bug, if you will, at the beginning of life around what it looked like to be very entrepreneurial. But like I can see from a lot of the chats actually that are on here and the students and what people are saying is that, I started in bio and was really pre-med, like Richard mentioned too, I thought that was the direction that I wanted to go. And so because of that, I started working at Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital at a really early age, became an EMT, started working in the emergency room, started working in the OR. And, pretty quickly realized that so much of the time, the way Western medicine goes is we're oftentimes treating people once they finally show up with a significant illness. It's just sort of the lack of progressiveness there is really about, treating problems once they finally show up versus trying to find those problems before they become bigger issues. And so I got, kind of a firsthand, it was a teaching hospital. So I got to see residents coming out of med school and spent a lot of time with different residents coming in and out, and really realized that I would probably have struggled pretty significantly working inside of sort of the healthcare system. Back then it was, quite frankly, even a little bit better than it is now in relation to, how healthcare has changed, especially here in California. One of the issues that's happened is that hospitals don't employ physicians directly. There's employee groups now, and there's a lot of change that's happened that's impacted healthcare in a huge way. And so long story short, in school for pre-med and really focusing at this, I started working at the hospital supporting transplant companies that would come in for organ transplantation. And, I was really shocked to find out that, roughly 80% of Californians have the pink dot on their license. They used to actually have to put it on, for those of you who remember that. Now they just print it on our cards when you select that. So that they have that pink dot on their license saying they're willing to be an organ donor. But actually the majority of people, when they get to a place in their life where either they're passing away, will not qualify. Almost less than 2% of people will actually qualify at the time point of the end of their life. And it's usually because they might have disease. Let's say they have breast cancer, they have something going on, lymphoma, they have other things. And so because of that, the majority of people don't actually have organs collected from them at that time point. And what I realized in working with those groups is I knew a lot of cancer researchers that were really struggling to get cancerous samples, let's say, from people with lymphoma. And so I didn't understand why, if somebody was very passionate about being a donor at the end of their life to whatever disease had truly impacted them, why would we block that person and block their request and really impacting their own disease or their own research? It felt to me like something was just broken, and that if I could just sort of help fix it, everything would be happy. I honestly thought it was an oversight more than anything else. And as I started to dig into it, I realized that transplant banks have really strict rules about not bringing disease-based products into their facilities, or organs or tissues or blood samples. And that the hospitals really couldn't really manage this themselves. This was not something that they could do organically on their own. And yet there was this huge need that needed to be dealt with. So in the very early days when I started StemExpress, I was just trying to facilitate between like research institutes, like Johns Hopkins was one of our first clients, University of Massachusetts, Harvard, and so on, and Stanford. And I just basically started trying to facilitate between these institutions and their disease-specific work that they were doing. And pretty quickly I realized that there was a whole lot more that they needed in relation to just even healthy donors that were, disease donors, healthy donors, and also just actively living donors that could participate in essentially like blood studies. So let's say somebody did have breast cancer and was being treated for that. There's a lot of cancer companies that are studying for liquid biopsy tests. So that now that we can actually do a blood test to detect if you have cancerous cells in your bloodstream long before you actually feel a lump in your breast, right? And that was the progressive part of medicine that I really wanted to get to, is how do we determine that? And so, you know, we will do projects where we have 1,000 women come to all different centers that we have around the United States that are in different forms of finding out that they have cancer, starting to take drug therapy, starting to do IV-based therapies or radiation. And we will get multiple blood samples over them, for example, for a period of time. It's just one project of hundreds and hundreds that we participate in, but it's a good example of sort of the role we play in helping to accelerate the work of the end companies that are producing the outcome. So really we're a service provider, and what I view us as an accelerator to cures and new discoveries, drugs, devices, and so on that can have a direct impact on patient care.
I love that you just saw a problem and just went for it. That's such an amazing story. And I think it's so you know, encouraging to hear also, and to see how really mission driven all of you are in that, in the ways you're affecting lives in a positive way, and just how much power there was there, and just saying, hey, why isn't this happening? I'm just going to go do it. So that's amazing. Thank you, Kate, for sharing that. And your background also, you know, I wouldn't have, EMT wouldn't have come to mind when I think of a CEO, right? So there you have it. Although I'm sure you're putting out emergencies all the time as a, you know, business leader, there's that. But
well, and Mary, if I can jump in there for 1 second, for those folks who have this in the background or not, you know, I see different people here, but you know, my degree from Sac State was in sociology in the end. I mean, I had all the right classes to go to pre-med, you know, to take my MCATs and everything else. So I pretty much have a major in bio or minor bio, but my focus was sociology, because at that time, most of the med schools were saying they didn't want bio majors. So they said, look at something else. And I oftentimes attest that my sociology is really what helped me in a lot of ways understand employees at a really deep level. Different people with different backgrounds. How do they come to things? How do they problem solve? You know, how does their family or their culture impact their decision making? So I definitely think it's helped me from a standpoint of business building, is understanding people, and sociology really helped me do that.
yeah, thank you for that perspective. And yeah, there are different ways to get at things, right? There's many different paths.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully those of you on the call are starting to get an inkling about that. So Scott, your turn. Share with us, if you could, a little bit about what went through your mind when you were in school and graduating, what your experiences were like getting started.
Well, perfect segue, because like Kate, I don't have a business degree. I don't have a chemistry degree. My degree is in geography. So nothing to do with the field I'm in. It just turns out that I'm very good at what I'm doing. So here I am. Actually, this job chose me. So I'm third generation in the chemistry business. My grandfather, Furnace, on my dad's side, was a corpsman during World War II. And when he got out, he started a clinical laboratory down in Southern California. My father worked for him. And then in the late 70s, moved the family to Modesto, California. My dad was a high school graduate, found a chemist, found a building, started a laboratory in Modesto, grew it to about a 50 employee company, and then sold it to an engineering firm that was looking for to have their own in-house laboratory. That was late 80s. And then in 1994, my mother bought this business that I own now. I had just recently got out of the Navy, had a completely different career path in mind. I was going to go, I love sports. I love being outdoors. I'm very athletic. So my passion was sports medicine, physical therapy, and obviously that didn't pan out. Moved from Long Beach up to Sacramento, and then pretty much started working at the laboratory as soon as I got here. I started in this business as a courier, picking up microbiology samples for Carmichael Water District and then bringing them into the laboratory. Then I moved inside the laboratory, worked in microbiology. Long story long, I worked in every department in the laboratory, whether it was metals prep, metal analysis, running the mass specs, anything that could be done chemistry-wise here in the laboratory, I did it. My mother's health failed, and I still hadn't, I guess, prior to this call, I was thinking about what was my goals. I've been doing this for so long. They've kind of been lost. So I don't know that I had any, this is what I wanted to do. But my mother's health went south. They approached me, said, we don't want to do this forever. Is this something you want to do? I said, let me think about it. And 26 years later, or 24 years later, I own the company. So to Kate's point as well, being a business owner requires people skills above everything else. It's people skills. So that's one of the most challenging things I think for any business leader, is to manage the different personalities within an organization. It's imperative that you surround yourself with good people and you trust those people to make the decisions and buy into the vision that you've put forth, and let the chips fall where they may. It's not always easy. It's not always fun. You know, I never have time away. I may physically away from the office, but I'm always on call. I always have my phone. Anything that happens, I get called. It could be the alarm. It could be the building. It could be one of my drivers got an act. You name it. It's probably happened at some point in time. So that's my long, strange trip.
Right. Well, we're fortunate nobody's called you while we're on this call so far,
This is
so
true.
that's good. That's good. And I'm hearing, you know, each one of you has responsibilities and looks to some extent at bringing people on board. And for our audience, I'm curious what you could share about career paths that exist within your organizations, within your industries, and what that variety might look like for students. And in light of that, what if there are particular hard or emerging or soft skills that you think would be important for students to cultivate while they're in school? So Richard, do you mind taking that one?
Yeah. When you, I can speak from experience on this one. When you come in for an interview at DPR, it's not what you know, it's how you present it. We are looking for those soft skills. We are looking for, I mean, because we have such a process to get to the point of, if you're sitting in front of us through an interview, we already have confidence that you can do the job. Now you need to show to us, what are these soft skills? You know, how do you act in a stressful situation? We're going to ask, you know, we're not going to ask you, you know, hard questions like, well, if you know, what's the precipitate of these two chemicals? No, that we're not going to do. But we will say, hey, if your supervisor comes in and tells you something that you think is wrong, how do you present yourself in that situation? So it's those situational questions that we put a lot of weight on more than anything else.
Yeah, and that's pretty common for government, I understand. Yes.
Yeah, it seems to be. As I said, if you got to that point, we've already done our background check. We've already done our homework. We know you can do the job.
Yeah. And what are some career pathways? What ways might you enter into Department of Pesticide Regulation? Student assistant jobs, would that be?
We do have student assistant jobs, which is really handy if you're obviously good at it, but it helps get name recognition. Oh, wait a minute, this person was a student assistant for this other group a couple years ago, and so when you see that name on paper, that helps. Also, it'll give you a clue of will there be a job opening soon. But nobody really has more knowledge than anybody else until it actually shows up on the Cal Careers webpage. So that aspect, it doesn't really help you, but definitely check out Cal Careers, the webpage. And one of the pieces of advice that I will gladly give to anybody looking for a government job is think outside of a box when you're filling out that Cal Careers page. Because a lot of things because you have to think about it. In reality, it's a self-certification. Do you think that you can do that job? And how well to your ability? So sometimes you'll get questions like, do you know how to balance a budget? Well, as a chemist, I wouldn't have even, I'm like, that's really not my forte, but can I balance my own checkbook at home? Can I check my own bank statements at home? Those little things actually, so think outside of the box when you're filling in that questionnaire. Don't think of, oh, well, I didn't have any laboratory experience, with this type of thing, but you had classes that probably did. Or, give me an example of leadership at any one point. Well, I probably don't have any. We're coming right out of college, but I probably did lead a study group at one point. So those kinds of things that we're really looking for.
Excellent. Good advice about those transferable skills. Thank you, Richard. And it gives you guys a little insight into the government hiring process. Poonam, what's it like for you where you work? What sort of skills you look for, and what are some career paths or some avenues that a student could take?
Like Richard said, with the government agencies, if you are selected for an interview, what we are looking for is your ability to interact with others and basically your core competencies. Right now, if you enter the workforce, you are working with different generations, and HR makes sure you meet all the educational requirements. They do that, but when we have candidates at the interview table, we need to make sure you can collaborate with each other. You can do teamwork. You can, like you mentioned, leadership. You don't need to have a title to be a leader. You need to show those leadership qualities, without a title. Being able to lead at your level. Doesn't matter what level it is. And so these core competencies are more, it's very critical because we hire for attitude, and we can train the people that we hire, the attitude, and that is very important. And we can have students starting as student assistants, scientific aides. These are different titles that you can look for when you look at the CalHR website. Agricultural technician, they have different levels of agricultural technicians. Environmental scientists. So now all the chemists in the lab are called environmental scientists. So that's a title. If you are within 6 months of graduation and you have, I think, about 25 or so chemistry units, don't quote me on that. You'll have to look at the website to make sure how many units of chemistry you need. You can apply for laboratory jobs with a degree. Even without a chemistry degree, if you have degree in other science fields, you can apply for environmental scientist positions. And again, these are basically self-assessment exams. And I really don't like these exams because so just be honest when you answer these questions and are rating yourself, because a lot of things shows up in the interview. Like some people would just go, yes, I'm highly experienced, everything, I'm 5, I'm so good. But then, basically when they get called for an interview, then it's not there. So honesty, it just shows that honesty, all these core competencies are very important.
Yeah, thank you. And for those of you on the call that might be curious about paths with government, please know that the Career Center is a resource for you. We work a lot with the state agencies, and our staff and our counselors are very well versed in how to help someone with the application process and the interviewing process. So we'll share a link to the Career Center when we get towards the end of the call. But please know that what some of the things that Poonam and Richard are talking about are processes that seem sort of foreign until you've done them, correct? But they are skills you can learn in terms of how to apply. Government is being quite different than private sector. So with that in mind, Scott, I'm going to turn to you because you've been to both worlds. I wonder if you can share in your current environment what it's like for you and in hiring people. I know you wear all the hats, what you look for there at the lab, and what qualities might stand out for you in an applicant.
Absolutely. So I'm grateful to say I have low turnover here in my laboratory. So again, my staff are my biggest assets. So it's in my best interest to retain the talent and do whatever that I can to retain the talent. because turnover hurts. Turnover is expensive. It takes time and money to train. It takes time and money to find people. And then to Poonam's point, it's somebody can look good on paper and then they come in and interview or even hire, and then that individual, you're like, ooh, who's this, right? So, but when we do, we always try to promote from within. So if there's somebody, because I have low turnover here at my laboratory, there's not a lot of room for upward growth. There may be lateral growth where they may move from one department to the next, but again, because there's not a lot of turnover, there's just not a lot of openings. But when we do have the opening, we'll obviously try and ask from within, this position is open? Is there anybody that's interested in moving in that direction? Or do you know somebody that you would recommend, knowing what the standards are here in the laboratory, and you feel you want to put your neck out and recommend somebody? If that doesn't work out, we've tried the Craigslist route, and that's a crapshoot. We will get a lot of resumes, but probably 95% of those resumes that are received, they didn't read the ad. We'll put something tricky within the ad to say, hey, make sure you respond to this, and they don't. So, you know, it's while you do get good responses via Craigslist, you also get a high degree of responses where they're not qualified, or they may be overqualified. So not that long ago, when the jobs were tough, we would have an entry-level position open in our sample receiving department, which is basically just logging in samples. It is very entry level. They would be doctors, PhDs responding to that position, which is just not a good fit. That's somebody's going to be here very quickly and then out the door. So we try to look for somebody to fit the role that we're hiring for. Again, if it's somebody with a high level of degree and it's an entry level position, that's not a good fit. And if the Craigslist doesn't work, or our internal call doesn't work, we'll reach out to a staffing agency, a scientific staffing agency, and ask them to help us fill that role. They've done the vetting on the front end. Yes, it's more expensive to us as a business entity to use those services, but there's benefits to that as well. So again, if that individual doesn't work out, it's fairly quick to replace them. It's the human emotion gets taken out of it, because you don't have to deal with that person and letting them know that it's not a good fit. You just make a phone call and they'll have somebody hopefully in there the next day that does meet the requirements. And again, as Poonam said, culture, right? So again, we have a very diverse group of people working here, and it's a big age swing as well. So you have to be able to get along with the team. You have to be able to know you have a voice on the team. You have to be able to know that should something be going sideways, or it's not what you've been told, or somebody's doing a health and safety issue, that you have access to anybody here. So those can be reported and we can fix those changes. But we, you know, with small business, we use every resource we can to try and fit our needs, and those have worked for us.
Thank you. So I'll tell you, this is interesting stuff. Do you take interns? I'm just curious.
We don't. Yeah, we don't.
Well, that's okay. We can talk later. No,
Okay.
just kidding. No, it's really interesting to hear. And it sounds like for companies like yours with low turnover, that networking piece would be critical for someone to find their way to you. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So do you have any recommendations for students who are just starting out with that process of how do I make the connections so that I can be in the right place in the right time when it comes about?
Yeah, so I go to a lot of professional outings. So I'm involved with the Groundwater Resources Association, a Sacramento branch. And again, COVID's changed everything, but you used to be able to meet in person and you kind of network there. So professional organizations that are beneficial to my business, I go and meet folks there. These sessions, these Zoom, LinkedIn, Zoom sessions are good. Again, now that we can't meet in face and go out and kind of rub elbows, so to speak. But you know, if somebody calls and says, hey, I'm interested, I would like to tour, I'm always an open book. Come see the laboratory, even to my clients, because there's a lot of moving parts here. It's not just, here's the report, but what did it take to get this report out? So if somebody wants to come, or a group of people want to come and see a working laboratory, to see what it takes, to see, it's not as sexy as CSI. I don't have neon light throughout my laboratory, right? And it's just, here it is right off the instrument. It's chemistry, and sometimes that scares people, but it's not scary. A lot of my stuff is automated too, so it takes a person to load and to start the equipment and kind of manage that. But with very few exceptions in the laboratory, it's very automated now. So I think I kind of lost track of your original question. Sorry, but networking opportunities, if they see something that maybe is interest to them, get involved with that. The networking things are very fun. The people are very open. They want to tell you about their companies. And for me, I work with a lot of engineering firms. So LinkedIn is a tool that I use to just try to stay connected with my clients. And a lot of my engineering clients are hiring. So, LinkedIn is also a valuable tool to try and keep on top of who's doing what and who's hiring and whatnot.
Great advice. Thank you, Scott. And students and alumni, hold that thought, because that's important stuff, how you find people in this world. I'd love to hear also from Kate a little bit about, you said you were hiring like crazy with COVID, and I'm just curious, when you go through that process, really regardless of level, is there something in your screening process that's very, very much about StemExpress that you look for in terms of core competencies and temperament skills, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many people have said so much good stuff, so I won't repeat what's already been said, but we do a lot of those things too. Scott was touching on a bunch of those too, as well as Panam. And I think I would say, for us, I see a number of people with a clinical lab science background. We've been hiring lots of CLSs and lots of even folks, because of the emergency order in the state of California, we actually have a lot of biological degreed folks that have sort of, graduated, that we've been able to also cross-train at running PCR equipment, which has been a really fun thing for a lot of them to get access to be able to do that and work with CLSs so closely and processing tests. So that's been a really exciting part for us too. I would say that, yeah, regardless of position, I think we look with people with an immense amount of drive and ownership. We have really some core values of the company we try to find in unique individuals. I will tell you that at one speaking engagement I gave at Sac State, some years ago, we had a student that came up to me afterwards who had been pre-med and kind of really related to my story and what I had talked about. And she approached me and was really dedicated to trying to get a job with us. And she just made such an impression. We ended up hiring her. She's been, I think, promoted 3 or 4 times through the company. She's now one of our lead auditors in quality. And so I think you guys drive and going after what you want just can't be understated enough with things. I think that this is so important to go after what you're passionate about and don't let roadblocks get in your way. We also, too, in the last number of years, brought in a Wiley's tool that helps do assessment testing. And so we have folks, when they get sort of down far enough in the interview process, we use this tool for like the last 3 candidates, which is, it's a pretty expensive process to have people go through, but it really analyzes folks' sort of skill sets around what we're looking for the position. Everyone in our company's taken it, included me. So it's also a really nice management tool, because when we rearrange managers or grow the way we have been, we can move 6 people and pull their assessments and see exactly sort of how they would align with their manager as well. So we've added a lot of data to that process and been really happy about how that's gone. So I would say those are some of the key things that stand out that haven't already been said.
Yeah, so the use of technology then is being really helpful for your organization in that screening. We do hear a lot about that. So it's good to see that the upside of what a great tool that can be for you.
And Mary, I say to a lot of people that come in and take this hour-and-a-half test, and do this whole process with us, I think one of the interesting things is, for those of you young people that are on dating apps, I think one of the things, right, I always joke about with people, you see these dating apps where someone says, I'm, an avid runner, I eat super healthy, love all animals, do all this stuff. and then you go out on your first date with someone and they could care less about exercising and they don't eat healthy, right? I think the reality of us is all of us to a certain degree have a different idea of sometimes who we are than who we actually are. And I think sometimes these tools really help us to unpack that. I think lots of us are in search for really understanding our true selves, and these sort of tools help us dig further at that.
Yeah, learn about yourself along the way, right?
Yeah.
That's good. It's all good, and all these career paths are all good. So students on the call, and I just wanted to call attention to the variety of majors that we have on this call. Everything from chemistry to geology, biology, physics. I think we had a civil engineering major in there. So I'm hopeful that students will hear this aspect of all the different choices that are out there and how important it is to be true to yourself along the process as you're going through this. To turn our attentions a little bit towards our current world that we live in right now. We're on a Zoom call. We don't have the chance to sort of meet one-on-one. I'm curious if how COVID has changed your business model, how it's changed for job seekers, or if you have any advice for what students, and I know that sometimes we get questions about, I didn't have the opportunity to do an in-person lab like I'd wanted, or what suggestions you might have, or ways that you think a student might want to take advantage or tap into or make the best of our current situation, because it's a strange times to be in the student, and certainly in student in your later years about to graduate. So I'll let anybody jump in there on that one. Any thoughts on that? Yeah, Richard.
Actually, the first thing that I would say, especially in this day and age of Zoom interviewing, is be comfortable with technology. So before your interview, make a Zoom account. Just practice a couple of times. Obviously, we're Zooming here today, so y'all probably understand how it all works. But just be, comfortable with it. The other thing that I would highly recommend, especially on Zoom calls, and I have not done this, but I have heard other supervisors do this, is when you set up a Zoom call, either have a virtual background or a plain background behind you. Try not to do it in a messy bedroom. Try not to do it, in a coffee shop, and dress like you would actually attend an interview. Like today, I've got slacks on, tie, and a nice shirt, because there has been instances, again, I have not done this, but I have heard people do it. They'll say, "Hey, we're just wondering what you worn to the interview today. Could you please stand up?" and you will, and some of the horror stories I've heard is people were good from the top up, but then they had shorts on, or pair of jeans or something else lower. Because just because you're on a Zoom call doesn't mean that you shouldn't present your best.
Exactly. Thank you. And I'm very excited. I just want to jump in here. There is a fifth panelist who, speaking of technical difficulties, has been very patient in trying to log in with us today. I'm sure it's something that I did, but we do have Abita on the call. I believe, Abita, are you with us? I know you had said that you wanted to jump in on this question. Are you there? Not sure. We've been communicating behind the scenes. So just wanted to let anyone know there is another panelist who's been trying to log in. And so hopefully she may join us with some aspects of this conversation. So thank you everyone for your patience in hanging with that part. Abita, if you are on the call, please feel free to open your mic and jump in with us, or your video, or both. And we'd love to hear from you. All right, staying on that subject, thank you, Richard, for your expertise there. Any suggestions, tips, or tricks for students who might be struggling with what do we do nowadays, or how do I get out there, and how do I get connected, and how do I share the experiences that I do have so that they show value to an employer even if they may not be in person?
I would say don't be afraid to get out there. Again, you can't always find these Zoom meetings, right? So put a mask on and go knock on a door. People are getting back into the offices. They may not be fully staffed like they were prior to this, but people are there. So maybe if you were eyeing a organization, but you can't find any way to connect with them online, pop in the office, drop off a resume, go old school, right? So I'm very interested in this job. Who do I contact? Is there an email? Is there a Zoom? Is there something? So if you're unsuccessful trying to do it all remotely, put a mask on and go knock on a door.
Wow, that's such great advice. And I don't think I would have thought of that as an option. So it's good to know that some folks are kind of back at it. Yeah, interesting. Any other feedback on this process for students?
Hit up your career center.
Thank you.
Thank
you for that pitch.
You would be amazed on how often DPR will reach out to Sac State or UC Davis's or local colleges, their career centers, saying, hey, look, we're hiring. We're putting a poster up there.
Nice. Good to hear. Yes. And so I'm going to turn our attention to some advice that you might be able to give our students on the call. What was something you wish you'd known when you were a student that might have really helped you along the way, that seems obvious now, but you didn't know back then? What would you like to share with students if there's one thing you wish you'd known when you were launching your career? Poonam, do you want to take that one?
It's not all about grades. People skills are the most important thing. Like, I wish I had known that, long time ago, not just focusing on the books and my grades and stuff, getting out there, doing things, being a normal person. That's very important, because that's what shows outside, nobody looks into your grades or anything. That's what shows outside, being, who you are, truly knowing yourself, and getting to know how to interact with others, how to do teamwork, because it's challenging. So people have different strengths, and knowing what strength you have and kind of growing those, and some weaknesses kind of helps.
Yeah, no, that's good advice. I think there is we get that question a lot about GPA, right? As being so important, and it's good to hear that more balanced answer about that. Certainly want to do good in school, but it's not the whole story, huh? Anyone else? What would you say to, what would you share? What do you wish you'd known? Scott? Or Richard, sorry, Richard?
I hate to dominate the conversation, but don't be, lack of a better term, full of yourself. I know you're coming straight out of college, you know everything in the world, but a lot of times your bosses and supervisors actually know more behind the scenes than you do. So be okay with being told, no, that's not how we're going to do it.
Good to know. So by saying that you'd wish you'd known that, are you saying then that, Richard, you were perhaps knew a lot when you first graduated?
I thought I did. But I didn't understand how, businesses and I'm sure Scott will chime in on this one, how there's a lot of, moving wheels, especially, and Kate too, especially. There's a lot of moving parts behind the scenes that you're unaware of why we can't make decisions the way we do. So you'll just have to understand that they'll tell you later, but right now you've just got to go along for the ride.
Good advice, Richard. And I think, if I am correct, is this Abita on the call?
Yes, it is. I guess this time you can, and I'm not talking to myself.
Yes, we can all hear you.
All right.
Thank you so much for joining us. So everyone, this is Abita Patra.
Thank you. Finally.
And she has been so patient trying to get on this call with us today. So thank you for joining us. And I know that you've been listening. So at one point you wanted to jump in on a question. And I'm trying to remember which one it was now, but do you remember what it was?
Well, Mary, I think you've had a great group of panelists here, and they've said it all. So I think one suggestion, that I'd like to give to the students here is, there are going to be many hurdles in your life. Just think of it like any other, and be confident, be yourself, and never be afraid to ask for help. That's one. And more importantly, never say never. And if someone says no, that doesn't mean no. It means no for now. And, you should keep pursuing it. Like maybe after 10 days, you may have another update and you might be, getting a new certificate for that job. You should keep continuing to network with the people that you know of, and then you should network with the people that you know, but not only that, through the events that are happening around you, or if someone introduces you to, but just keep continuing to pester them into learning more about you. So I think that's what helps in the big scheme of things. And I think I've always said you should have the grit to own the world. You should have the power to constantly evolve yourself, and you should learn basically as much as you can, because the day you stop learning is when you stop growing.
Continuous learning. And thank you, if I might, Abita. This is coming from our fifth panelist. And just to share a little bit about Abita, she is CEO of Otometrics. And I guess it would be safe to say she is not just CEO, but entrepreneur, investor, board member, advisor, and Otometrics is developing non-invasive method to deliver drugs and other therapeutic payloads to inner and middle ear compartments to the eye and into the skin. So Abita has an amazing array of accomplishments behind her. And Abita, I'd love not to change our flow, but just to share with our students, if you wouldn't mind just telling them a little bit about who you are, your current role, because I know you have great advice, and we're going to dive more into tips and advice for students, but just a little background for them, if you wouldn't mind. And you can see in the chat the different backgrounds of our students, but I think they'd be curious to hear a little bit more about Otometrics and what you do there.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Mary. Guys, my background is somewhat like yourself. I come from a family of, business in pharmaceuticals. I co-own a pharmaceutical company with 150 generic products on the market. I've always been curious about new things, new technologies in the world. I did my master's in biotech from UPenn. And after that, when my son was 2, because I always wanted to learn, I went ahead and did my Global Executive MBA from UCLA Anderson School of Management and National University of Singapore. I've been in international management and business and, alliances for more than 2 decades now. And more importantly, I think I love to learn. I love to learn about biotech, about pharmaceutical, about pharma and IT, and incorporating different fields. So I am a co-founder of multiple companies in the field of devices, as well as AI and whatnot. Otometrics is a unique company that we have because it bridges the gap between pharma and biotech world, where pharma is spending billions of dollars developing the drugs, but the way of delivery isn't that great, because only a few percentage of the drug is actually going to the target indication, and it's not actually doing the treatment which it is supposed to do within 10 minutes. So with Otometrics, we thought we could bridge the gap, and that's where we come in, where we are a drug delivery mechanism, and primarily a non-invasive drug delivery mechanism, where we are delivering the drugs by loading them onto magnetic nanoparticles, and we are using magnetic force to deliver the drugs to the target indication within 10 minutes. We've proven the concept in animals already, and our primary target indications are otitis media, where kids under the age of 5 who have multiple ear infections, who have to go through surgeries. We are providing an alternate treatment so that they don't have to go through those surgeries, and within 10 minutes they get our treatment and they, get well soon. The other indication is chemo-induced hearing loss. Many kids many kids who have cancer, I don't know if you know, they have hearing loss in addition to hair loss, nausea, and vomiting. We want to make sure that if they recover from cancer, which 80% of the kids will once they go through chemotherapy, with our treatment of non-invasive, targeted, localized delivery of the drug, they will have the hearing retained as well after the treatment so that they can live a normal life. So the whole goal of Otometrics is to provide a non-invasive drug delivery treatment, eliminating any sort of surgeries or needle-based treatments that are existing in the market. Basically, what we are doing is we are creating a better world for the existing drugs that are in there in the market. And we are a collaborator to multiple pharmaceutical companies. But yeah, I like the concept, and I think that's what the future needs.
Thank you, Abida. And wow, really life-changing things that you're doing there with your organization. So for those students who are on the call, I mean, I think one of the things that these conversations do for me at least, and hopefully for you as well, is sparks your curiosity and helps to fuel what questions or what things are important to you, what problems are out there in the world that you might want to solve, or what skills you might want to be curious about developing, because you're getting an insight into a lot of opportunities and a lot of different environments where you're really seeing that these individuals are making the world a better place. So it's very inspiring to hear from all of you. With that said, I'm wondering if you all, and I want to leave some time for everyone to ask questions, but I do have one final question for the panel before we open it up. And this is just kind of a classic question, but it has to do with career advice. And coming from where you are personally as well, what advice would you share with the students if you could say, hey, here's what I would do if I were in your shoes? Who wants to jump in first on that one? Scott.
See, I think I can answer that question
well,
if you.
Yeah, Abida. We'll let Abida go since she came in last. That's okay, Scott.
Okay.
Great, Abida. Thank you.
Yeah, so see, I'll tell you, when I got my first job, I was at UPenn and I was doing my industrial biotech course. And we were presenting our technologies and methods of treating one of the bottlenecks that Wyeth and my Merck and other companies were facing. So we had a lot of executives coming into that course who were presenting real world problems to us, and we were finding solutions to them. So I would say if there is an industrial course where you are able to get an access to real life CEOs, you should talk to them afterwards, right? When you present your way of doing things, just talk to them. They might like what you're doing, and that's exactly what happened with me. I was hired by Merck right after that, course, because they liked what I presented. They thought what I presented could be one of their solutions. And yeah, they hired me. And that was my first job, I don't know, 15 years ago. And I would say that's one way of doing things. But having said that, career advice that you guys have at Sac State is another way to go. And more importantly, I think you should talk to the investors in the region as well. They might be looking at someone entrepreneurial like yourself who's curious to change the world. And you might start as an analyst there, or you might want to talk to someone in San Francisco. There are a lot of biotech companies and pharma companies, or even AI-based companies who are looking for new hires right now who can work from home because the world is changing. So look at all the new companies that are in Sacramento, outside Sacramento, and who are looking to work with amazing people like yourself.
Thank you, Abida. And I really appreciate you bringing that whole startup piece into it. And Sacramento is a great region for this. Between the whole Davis area and the Sacramento area, there's organizations students can get involved with. Startup SAC, we have the Carlson Center for Innovation here on campus. There's a lot of ways to connect with new businesses. Back before COVID, I used to go to some of those startup meetings to hear people's or go to venture capitalist pitches, and everyone's always really open to talking. And so that's just fabulous advice, Abita. Thank you for that, because it's very, very easy to get to those groups here in Sacramento. Sacramento is very supportive of the startup community, and the Career Center can help you connect with those organizations if you're interested in finding that out. And certainly I'm sure there's faculty and staff on the call too, who are also probably connected well with those organizations that support startups. So great advice, thank you. All right, Scott.
Mine's easy. Be flexible. It's pretty rare that you're gonna get your dream gig right out of the bat, right? It's just, as Richard mentioned earlier, every organization has challenges. Some people work better with others, and it just takes flexibility and learn how to breathe, right? Sometimes it's the small stuff gets us down, but to maybe be able to take a step back, take a breath, maybe walk around the building, do what you got to do. But life doesn't end with that decision. So just take a breath. It's going to keep going, whether you like the answer or not. And just be flexible and smile. People can pick up on warmness. So have fun with it.
Yeah, have fun is also really good advice, and breathe is good advice too, especially day before the election, right? So
Right.
Good timing there, Scott. Thank you for that. Yeah, very important stuff. And I think students on the call, if you don't already realize it, just by doing this today and by having to pivot the way we all have with COVID and making your way through online college, that's a lot of flexibility. So you're already halfway there. Who else would like to dive in with some career advice? Yeah, Kate.
So I'll just, sort of tag onto that with what Scott was saying. I think that one of the best classes I took in college, thankfully, was suggested to me by someone I never would have taken it otherwise. And it was kind of a career planning class. But one of the things they talked about was to go and investigate the careers that you think you want to be in. Try to, the best you can, back to Mary's question, we do internships. We just had a bunch of interns come through this summer. We have more here starting in the fall. Do your best to get right next to the person or the position you think you want to have, and try to follow that person around. And I think, to that point, I think there's a lot of people who think that owning a business is all luxury and all vacation all the time. As Scott said earlier, this is not a true statement. And I think that, but I think to that point, right, if you're thinking of starting your own business or doing something in that regard, I would strongly suggest, going and chair studying next to someone in that sort of, 3 to 6 year mark of starting a business and really seeing what that looks like. What does that entail doing? If your plan is to, I'm just trying to think of like in other capacities of biology and other things, but is to, work at an academic institution versus a private sector. I've been having a lot of conversations with Sac State and some of the deans there about the differences between private sector companies and jobs versus academic-based career pathing. And so I think it's really important to expose yourself as much as you can to these different areas to make sure if that path's going to fit for you, and really make sure if it's going to be in good alignment with what you think it is.
Yeah, thank you, Kate. Good advice. Richard, Poonam, any final thoughts to share?
Yeah,
before we plug the questions at you?
Kind of backing on what Kate's definitely saying is, just got to remember your first job. It's not and as everyone's saying, it's not going to be it's going to be your dream job. It's your first stepping stone to something better. So think about it that way.
Thank you. Important. Yeah. Statistically, I don't know what the number is, but I know that nowadays, when you graduate, you are statistically not going to stay in that same job your whole life. It keeps changing what it is, but typically people have 4 or 5 careers over the course of their life. So, I won't even tell you how many jobs I've had. So thank you for that. It is one step at a time. Poonam, anything that you'd like to add?
The panel said it very well. Be flexible, be open, and use it as a stepping stone to move on to better, greener places. And your instructors and faculty at school, I mean, they can be a resource too. So if you are, sometimes we at the lab here, we reach out to the chemistry department, some instructors, and then we say, hey, we are looking for students. You have someone, send them our way. So, talk to them. They can be your resource as well.
Yeah, thank you for that. I mean, just what I've heard in the last couple minutes, practical application, flexibility, asking for help, using resources, being curious and actually researching and looking into these fields you're looking at. Wow, I wish I'd known all that when I graduated back then. So we have a few minutes left. I'd like to open it up to our audience here for questions. So please feel free to throw it up in the chat, any question you'd like, whatever you're curious about that you'd like to ask each or any panelist. This is an incredible opportunity with these individuals here with us today. So I want to make sure we take advantage of all this goodwill and expertise. So. No question is too small. Anyone in the chat? So I can keep going. I can ask questions all day long. I'm still curious about a whole lot of things, but I really want students to have an opportunity for them to hear your voice. And it's okay to open up your mic if you want to chat, verbally, or if you want to type it, that's fine too. Quiet and no questions?
I guess we're just that good.
I guess you are that good. So I'm gonna dive in just a little bit more so that I can take every last minute of your time. But I am curious about the networking aspect in your field and in your world of work. We talked a little bit about LinkedIn and a little bit about private, associations and things. I'm just curious a little bit about how you built your own networks in your own lives, and what that looks like, and if you did do any of this when you were a student, what that looked like for you. I think a lot of people don't, because we're busy with many other things, and it's uncomfortable, so it ends up falling on the outside of what we might do first. But I'm just curious about your networks and how you built them and what tools you use to stay connected and to meet new people in the field. Yeah, Scott.
Yeah, for me, a lot of networking, a lot of just going door to door, meeting existing clients, getting referrals from existing clients. In my business, with the private engineers that we work with, the geologists tend to move jobs fairly routinely from this company to that company to this company. So that's always an opportunity for me to be introduced to another set of peers that they are new with. So it's an opportunity for me to go and tell them about my company, how we stand apart from the competition, why they should use us, what we do, how we do it, because it's not proprietary. Anybody can open an environmental laboratory. They must be accredited through the state of California and through the ELAP program. But again, it's not proprietary information, but we tend to take a very client services attack, meaning, we want to be very client focused. We want to be out in front of it. And that does set us apart. So the question, how have I done that? I've done it via LinkedIn. I've done it being involved with professional organizations. I've been president of the Groundwater Resource Association locally. So that afforded me the opportunity to reach out to speakers and find speakers, and therefore getting to know my company. And with my circumstance, I've been in this forever, right? Even before I realized I was working in the business, I was in the business. So 24 years is a long time to work for an organization. And I've been at the helm for about 12 of those 24. So it's afforded me the opportunity to sometimes force myself out to go because business is slow, or I've heard something, or competitors doing X, so I've got to do Y. So being the figurehead of the company. I mean, people think when they think of CLS, they think about me. And so it's important that I always have my best foot forward, and I'm listening and helping them also recruit as well. So again, going back to LinkedIn, if there's something I can share with somebody else that they're doing that others aren't, or maybe I've come across a bid that is a geotech bid and not an environmental chemistry bid, you know, throw them bones that way, give them a little lead. So help kind of pay it forward. It may not be something that directly relates to money through my front door, but if I can help them succeed in their mission statement, that goes a long ways as well. And it's relationship building. It really still is kind of, it's an old cliche, but it is, you know, who you know goes a long ways. And if you are out there and you represent well and you're honest and you're truthful and people see that, that goes a long ways as well. So that will help, may not help secure a job, but it will certainly open that door for you.
Helping to build a community, hopefully
For sure.
professional community of people you can relate to. And I imagine, I don't know if any of you belonged to student clubs or orgs when you were a student, but that's one way to do it while you're a student, is to start there too, and at least get that group together of like-minded, and then maybe venture out from there to LinkedIn and other sources. So how about yeah.
Mary, we did have a question come in.
Oh, good. Yes.
Do you want me to go ahead and read it?
Please.
Okay. So the question is, how much time should we expect a hiring process to be? Does it take several weeks to several months? How long should I wait for a potential response after applying and submitting a resume? I think anyone, it's not directed to anyone specific. So if anyone wants to jump in on that.
For me in the private, fairly quick. So again, being a communicative company, I will always let everybody know, good, bad, or indifferent. You're going to know in a week's time or so what the decision was. So you're not left waiting, whatever happened at California Laboratory Services. So that's the experience here at my lab. Usually if somebody leaves, if they're nice enough to give us 2 weeks, that we've got to move pretty quick to fill that role. I don't have 3 or 4 people deep in every single position. So we need to fill that role pretty quickly. And again, I just think I've been on that end where you're waiting and waiting and waiting. So I just think it's good practice for us to just say, hey, we're going to fill this in a week, and you'll know within a week whether you've got their job or you're going to come back in or whatever the case may be. I've got to imagine that's significantly different with the state.
I guess that was a lead in to Poonam and Richard, if you'd like to answer that too.
Oh yeah, the state process can be, it can be a lengthy process, but it all depends. If somebody leaves and that position needs to be filled out really quickly and there's approval, like budget approval, everything's in place, then it can happen quickly within a month or so. But if not, it could take 3 to 4 months sometimes. And with the state, if there's a closing date of today, I would say check back in 2 weeks with, with the person whose name is on the bulletin. Check back with that person and say, hey, I submitted an application. Where are you in the process right now? And they will tell you. I mean, they'll give some directions, as sometimes we receive like thousands of applications for this one position. And they have to weed through all these applications before we can start interviewing. Like each application has to be addressed in one way or the other. And that gets to the time, but definitely reach out within 2 weeks and see and you'll get a response. Like somebody will respond and tell you, hey, that we are still in the process of looking at the applications or wherever they are.
And I remember when I first learned that, I don't know why I was surprised, but I thought, oh, government, but there isn't anyone there, but they actually have a person that you can speak to for all these jobs. It's lovely. So, Richard, did you want to join in anything on government before we move to Kate?
Yeah, to kind of echo Poonam's answer there, what a lot of people don't, and I'm sure Mary, you understand this too, that a lot of people don't understand is there's, unlike, Scott and Kate, where they're probably doing the hiring right away, we have a lengthy, unfortunately, and fortunate process that it has to go through. It's got to It's got to be approved first with the department. Then it's got to go to our HR group. We got to make sure that all of our wording's correct in the bulletin. Then it needs to go through another group. Then we can actually, post the job. Then we get the applications in, and then we have to review all of those. And then there's a screening criteria, and then there's the interview process. So for kind of what Poonam's saying, in the state work, yeah, it's can be lengthy. Also in my previous life, I was also in a private industry, and I did quite a bit of hiring. And yeah, I'm with Scott. I'm back then when I didn't have a large HR group. It was, hey, you interested in a job? Can you start tomorrow? Awesome. It could be that fast. I mean, that's how I got hired. They literally, I came in on a Monday. I was in the lab on Tuesday.
There you go, a little contrast there.
Yeah.
Thank you, Richard. I know we're pretty much out of time, but I wanted to hear from Kate on what that looks like for you, because I know maybe there might be students who even want to apply with your organization now. So. Oops, sorry, I don't think we can hear you.
I think somehow I double muted myself. I was going to say, just remember how, that in general, I think that, good jobs aren't hired quickly. If you think about, if you want to get hired to swing a sign on the street, they'll hire you this afternoon and you can start tomorrow. But I think that, when you're looking for a good job and with a good company, you want them to be picky about the people that they hire, because that's the people you're going to work with. And you want them to be, focused on culture and company culture and how you're going to fit with that group. Because the next person that they hire after you want the company to care about that too as well. Are they going to be right with your team or not? And that takes time, and I would say for us, on an average position, it's somewhere between, 4 and 5 weeks, usually not as far out as 6. But, we also put people, through an average of probably 3 to 6 interviews, depending on the type of position that it is. And so we're pretty diligent about that and just making sure we really have the right fit in someone. So I think remember to be patient for the right job. It should show you a good thing when the company is really taking their time to make sure that you're fitting in well with the entire team.
Thank you, Kate. Those are excellent words. I had myself muted too. And yes, I can say one of the things, sitting in the employer relations seat at the Career Center, one thing that I hear the most is the thing that often people forget to do is to do their research. So that to me, Kate, points also to really investigate where you want to go and do your research on it, because the company is going to do the same with you when it's a good opportunity and it's a good hire. So doing your homework definitely pays off. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I see that Yinfa Ma has joined our call. I'm putting a link in the chat for the Career Center. So for anyone who wants some assistance with these processes we've talked about today, we're definitely there for you. I want to say a big thank you to everyone on the call today, and also for Abita, who had to leave, but she was able to join briefly. You all have really just been amazing resources for students and alumni here today. So thank you so much. And I'm sure Yinfa would like to say a word.
Well, I just want to say on behalf of NSM College, and thank you all the panelists, and your words value so much for our students. And I'm sure the impact of you and the help, and it's cannot use anything to measure. It's so valuable and also lasts a long time. It's not gonna go tomorrow. So, and from my deep heart, and thank you so much, everyone, for taking you such a valuable time to help NSM students. We really, really appreciate it. And hope to see you on campus when the pandemic is over, so we can talk face to face. Thank you again. Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you. We will, these are just the beginnings of conversations. Hopefully it's been great getting to know all of you, and for our students, I hope I'm speaking on their behalf as well. I'm seeing lots of thank yous with exclamation marks in the chat. So thank you again for joining us and for taking time from your super busy schedules. You know who to reach out to if you are hiring. We're happy to connect you with this fabulous, talented students and alumni, do stay safe, and let's all get through the election week and have a great day.
Thanks, Mary.
Thank you.
Hope to
Thanks,
see
Mary.
some of you at DPR.
Mary, thank you.
Thank you.